Overthinking often feels like an enemy living in your mind, an exhausting, relentless loop of what ifs, assumptions, predictions, and second guesses. Most people treat it as a malfunction, a flaw, or a sign that something is terribly wrong with them. But what if overthinking isn't trying to destroy you? What if it's actually trying to tell you something important, something you have ignored for too long? Overthinking is rarely random. It usually appears when a part of your inner world feels overwhelmed, unheard, or unsafe. Instead of being an obstacle, it becomes a messenger that refuses to be dismissed. Think of overthinking as your mind's way of raising a red flag. When you replay a conversation in your head again and again, it's not because you enjoy torturing yourself. It's because at some level, you didn't feel understood, valued, or confident in that moment. When you obsess over a decision, it's not because you're incapable. It's because the choice carries emotional weight and you fear the consequences of getting it wrong. Overthinking becomes the coping mechanism that steps in when your emotional clarity is missing. But the most important truth is this: overthinking is almost always a sign that you don't feel safe. Not physically unsafe, but emotionally. Unsafe to fail, unsafe to be wrong, unsafe to disappoint others, unsafe to trust your intuition. And when your inner world lacks this safety, your mind tries to compensate by analyzing every detail, trying to predict outcomes, trying to stay ahead of danger that may not even exist. Your mind becomes hypervigilant because your emotions feel unprotected. Overthinking also appears when you've been neglecting your deeper needs. Maybe you've been avoiding an uncomfortable truth. Maybe you are suppressing emotions you don't want to face, like sadness, resentment, loneliness, or fear. Maybe you are living in a way that contradicts your values, but you're scared to make big changes. Instead of confronting these deeper issues directly, your mind distracts you with endless loops of thought. Overthinking becomes a smokescreen that protects you from facing the root of the problem. Another powerful message overthinking tries to communicate is that you're carrying too much on your own. When you feel isolated, when you don't have a safe place to express your fears or doubts, your mind has no choice but to process everything internally. Overthinking becomes the conversation you wish you could have with someone you trust. It becomes the emotional outlet you don't feel you have in real life. Most people try to silence their overthinking by force, by distracting themselves, numbing themselves, or trying to just stop. But you can't silence a messenger without hearing the message. The moment you stop treating your overthinking as a problem and start treating it as a signal, everything changes. It becomes less of a burden and more of a guide, pointing you toward the parts of your life that need healing, clarity, boundaries, or courage. Overthinking doesn't mean you're broken. It means your mind is trying to guide you toward what your heart needs. Overthinking is not just a habit. It's a psychological pattern built from your past experiences, your fears, and your unmet emotional needs. People often assume that overthinking means they are weak, unstable, or flawed. But the truth is far more compassionate. Your mind spins in circles because it once had to. Somewhere in your past, overthinking became a survival strategy, a way to protect yourself, avoid pain, or manage uncertainty when life felt unpredictable. One reason your mind gets stuck in loops is because it's trying to gain control over things that feel uncontrollable. When you fear the unknown, your brain tries to reduce the uncertainty by thinking through every possible scenario. It imagines outcomes, predicts reactions, and prepares responses. The intention isn't to torture you, it's to make you feel safe. But the more your mind tries to control life, the more overwhelmed you feel, because life cannot be controlled through thought alone. Another reason you overthink is because you've learned to trust your thoughts more than your emotions. Maybe you grew up in an environment where expressing feelings wasn't safe or accepted. Maybe you were rewarded for being logical, composed, or mature, even when you were hurting inside. Over time, your mind became your primary tool for coping. while your heart became a place you avoided. Overthinking becomes a shield that protects you from feeling emotions that you're afraid might consume you. Overthinking also happens when you place too much pressure on yourself. When you believe you must always make the right decisions, always be the perfect version of yourself, always avoid mistakes, or else something terrible will happen. Your mind panics under the weight of that expectation. It starts analyzing every detail, even the smallest ones, because you have tied your self-worth to performance, success, or approval. The fear of disappointing yourself or others becomes a loop your mind cannot escape. Your mind also spins in circles when you ignore your intuition. Intuition is quiet, subtle, and gentle. Overthinking is loud, repetitive, and demanding. When your intuition is trying to tell you something uncomfortable, leave that relationship, change that job, set that boundary. Your mind steps in to protect you from the discomfort of action. It distracts you with endless thought loops, so you don't have to confront a truth that requires courage. Another overlooked cause of overthinking is emotional fatigue. When your life is cluttered with unresolved issues, unfinished conversations, lingering doubts, unhealed wounds, your mind becomes overloaded. It keeps revisiting the same thoughts, not because it enjoys repetition, but because those issues have not been resolved. It's like your brain keeps opening tabs, but you never close any of them. Eventually, the system becomes overwhelmed, and the cycle never stops. Overthinking can also be a sign that you feel disconnected from yourself, from your purpose, or from the people around you. When you feel misunderstood or unsupported, you retreat into your mind. You try to figure everything out alone, even though the human mind was never designed to carry the weight of life by itself. In truth, overthinking is not your enemy. It's a sign that a deeper part of you is asking for attention, safety, clarity, or healing. And when you understand where your overthinking comes from, you finally gain the power to transform it. Overthinking isn't random, it's a messenger. It may feel chaotic, exhausting, or frustrating, but beneath the noise, something inside you is trying to speak. The mind does not repeat the same thoughts without a reason. There is always an underlying message, a deeper truth you've been avoiding, an emotional need you haven't acknowledged. When you begin to understand what your overthinking is pointing toward, everything shifts. The noise becomes guidance. The confusion becomes clarity. One of the first messages hidden inside overthinking is this: something in your life is misaligned. Your mind overanalyzes when your heart is not at peace. Maybe you're in a relationship where you feel unsafe or unheard, and your mind keeps replaying conversations, trying to make sense of them. Maybe you're in a job that drains you, and your mind keeps imagining different futures because your spirit knows you don't belong where you are. Overthinking often signals that you're living in a way that contradicts your deeper truth. Overthinking can also be a sign that you've been ignoring a difficult emotion. Anxiety, sadness, loneliness, anger, these feelings don't disappear just because you suppress them. When you don't allow yourself to feel them, they transform into mental loops. Your mind keeps spinning because your heart is holding something heavy. Overthinking becomes a way of avoiding the emotional discomfort that's trying to surface. The message is simple: feel what you've been refusing to feel. Another hidden message is about unspoken needs. Humans need connection, reassurance, love, understanding, and support. But many people learn to minimize these needs, believing they must handle everything alone. When your needs go unmet, the mind begins to overthink as a way to self-soothe, to fill the silence, or to create imaginary solutions. Your overthinking is telling you you don't have to carry everything by yourself. Sometimes overthinking is pointing toward a decision you need to make, but fear is stopping you. The more you delay, the louder your mind becomes. It keeps replaying options, risks, and outcomes because deep down you already know the truth. You just haven't accepted it yet. Your overthinking is saying you're standing at a crossroads. Choose. Overthinking can also bring awareness to old wounds you haven't healed. Maybe your trust was broken in the past, and now your mind analyzes every word someone says, looking for danger. Maybe you are abandoned or disappointed, and your mind is trying to prevent it from happening again. The hidden message here is not that you can't trust life, it's that a part of you still needs healing. Overthinking is a reminder of where you hurt, where you fear, and where you need compassion from yourself. Another powerful message behind overthinking is that your life is asking you to slow down. When you live on autopilot, rushing, suppressing, avoiding, overworking, your mind becomes overloaded. Overthinking forces you to stop and look inward. It pulls you into introspection because your inner world needs attention. It's saying pause, breathe, reflect. Something important inside you needs space. Ultimately, the deepest message behind overthinking is this: you are not listening to yourself, not to your intuition, not to your body, not to your true desires. Overthinking becomes loud when your inner voice has been ignored for too long. Once you start listening, the noise begins to fade. Listening to your overthinking doesn't mean sinking deeper into it. It means understanding the message behind it and learning how to respond with clarity instead of panic. When you shift from fighting your thoughts to understanding them, your entire inner world begins to change. Overthinking may feel like an enemy, but it becomes a guide when you learn how to listen. The first step is to create space, not mental space, emotional space. Most people try to analyze overthinking with even more thinking, which only creates a bigger storm. Instead, pause, breathe, notice the thoughts without jumping into them. Imagine your thoughts like waves coming toward the shore. You don't need to chase them or stop them. You only need to watch them rise and fall. This simple witnessing creates distance, and in that distance, clarity begins to appear. Once you have space, ask a gentle question: what am I really afraid of? Overthinking is almost always rooted in fear. Fear of making the wrong choice. Fear of losing someone. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of repeating past pain. When you acknowledge the fear, the mind softens. The thoughts lose their intensity because they no longer need to shout to be heard. When the fear becomes clear, you can address it directly instead of battling the symptoms of it. Then ask another question: what truth am I avoiding? This question often reveals the core message behind overthinking. Maybe the truth is that you're not happy in a relationship. Maybe the truth is that you're exhausted. Maybe you don't trust someone. Maybe you don't feel fulfilled. Overthinking tries to protect you from the discomfort of facing truth, but the truth itself often brings relief once you finally acknowledge it. Another powerful way to listen is to connect with your body. Overthinking is a sign that your mind has taken over completely. When your mind is too loud, your body becomes the anchor that brings you back to the present. Place your hand on your chest or your stomach. Feel the warmth. Feel the rise and fall of your breathing. Notice where the tension lives. Your jaw, your neck, your shoulders. These sensations speak more clearly than your thoughts. Your body reveals whether something feels right or wrong long before your mind does. Listening to overthinking also means identifying which thoughts are coming from past wounds instead of the present moment. A helpful question is this thought based on what is happening right now or on something that happened long ago? If your overthinking is rooted in old pain, the message is that healing is needed, not more analysis. Healing comes from compassion, not mental arguments. It comes from allowing yourself to feel what you've been holding on to, instead of trying to think your way out of emotional wounds. The final step in listening is gentle action. Once you understand what your overthinking is trying to tell you, take one small, calm step toward addressing it. Not a dramatic leap, just a step. That step might be setting a boundary, taking a break, asking for help, journaling, making a decision you've been avoiding, or simply resting. Overthinking quiets when your actions align with your truth. It quiets when you stop betraying yourself. When you learn to listen to your overthinking instead of fighting it, you discover that it was never your enemy. It was your inner voice speaking through the only language it had left. And once you truly listen, the noise fades. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you finally reconnect with your own inner wisdom.